Starting on Wednesday, dogs from more than 100 countries won't be allowed into Canada. The Canadian government says it's to prevent dogs who are considered at high risk of having rabies from entering the country. Animal rights advocates say there are other ways to protect humans and dogs. Joining us to talk about it is Camille Labchuk, an animal rights lawyer with Animal Justice. Thank you for being here.
It's good to join you.
So going up against the Canadian government isn't an easy task, I would imagine. Why do you think there is a case to be made against this decision?
Well, we think this decision was made hastily without consultation with any dog rescue organizations, and it's something that the Canadian public is strongly opposed to. So I can tell you that we've had tens of thousands of signatures on the petition Animal Justice launched, and there's even a parliamentary petition now launched by Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner that's received thousands of signatures as well. So it's not something that Canadians appreciate, this idea that we're no longer a safe haven for dogs from some of the world's most vulnerable countries.
And how long have dogs from these countries been able to enter Canada? Do you know?
Well, to my knowledge, there's never been restrictions. Canada's always been a haven for dogs who may be dodging traffic in the streets, who may be in high-kill shelters and at risk of euthanasia. And coming from countries without the same animal welfare infrastructure that Canada has, we have long been considered a real lifeline for dogs in these circumstances. And to now shut off the tap and essentially leave these dogs doomed to their death is something that I think is really heartbreaking and that Canadians don't want to see.
And the government says it is doing this ultimately to protect Canadians, it says, from a potentially fatal disease. But you and many others argue there are better ways to go about doing this. What are they?
Well, everyone agrees that preventing dog rabies from taking hold in Canada is a very important goal. No one would dispute that. And I think what the rescue community is asking for is something that falls short of a full-on ban on bringing dogs into the country from vulnerable places. Canada has really not had many rules about importing dogs in the past, unlike places like the UK, the European Union, Australia, New Zealand. We just haven't had many health measures in place. So what Canada's doing is essentially going from 0 to 100 without much of a clear rationale. So what we're saying is that rabies vaccinations are 100% effective in preventing rabies from developing in a dog. And to be extra sure that the dog has received that vaccine and developed antibodies, you can require a blood test to show whether the dog has those antibodies. And that is a very strong insurance policy and against making sure rabies cannot come into Canada. So that would be a really good measure instead of a full-on shutdown of dog rescue.
And I'm curious, how are other countries handling this?
Well, other countries do have some intermediate measures in place, sometimes stronger than what Canada had previously to prevent the spread of rabies, and we think that's appropriate. I will say the United States last year announced a similar temporary ban, similar to one that Canada has now announced. And they rescinded that recently in favor of rabies vaccinations, of antibody tests, and even quarantine in some cases. So there's lots of other ways Canada could be addressing this problem without going to a full-on ban that will certainly condemn dogs to die.
And Canadians are often encouraged to adopt dogs and not purchase dogs from breeders, for example. So what could this mean for Canadians who want to adopt a dog?
Well, we know that thousands of dogs come into the country every year thanks to the selfless efforts of rescue organizations. And if Canadians aren't able to adopt those dogs through rescue operations, we fear that they'll turn to places like Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace and might buy dogs who come from puppy mills or unethical breeders. And that would be a real shame because we have a serious puppy mill crisis in this country. It's exacerbated by the fact that we don't really regulate dog breeding, so puppy mills are allowed to flourish. And so for the government to both turn its back on puppy mills as a starting point and then disallow international rescue, to us, that's a really unfortunate situation and something that simply isn't right.
And so what are you hoping happens? I mean, ultimately, this decision has been made. It's set to take effect on Wednesday. What are you hoping for in the future? What do you think could change the government's mind?
Well, I can tell you this decision has really struck a chord with Canadians, and I'm hearing from thousands of people who simply don't stand for this type of shutdown of international dog rescue. So I'm really hoping that the government will listen to sense here. We know that this decision was made seemingly without any consultation with the dog rescue community, and those folks have been very active encouraging the government to take other measures that fall short of a full-on shutdown of dog rescue. So we're very hopeful that this wrong-headed decision will be rescinded and the government will take measures that can respect public health and dog health while also not condemning dogs to die in the streets in war-torn countries like Ukraine and Afghanistan.
All right, we'll see what happens. Camille Labchuk is an animal rights lawyer with Animal Justice. Thank you so much for your insight on this.
Thanks. It was good to be here.